Alright, the 92nd Academy Awards are very soon, and I'm not upset about the nominations this time around. I mean, it's just last year, a bunch of films got nominated for a bunch of awards they didn't really deserve, and Green Book, of all movies, won Best Picture. You know, that movie about racism by and for white people, that wasn't necessarily bad, but Best Picture? Like, come on, they did so much to try to get people to watch the Oscars again, and it was just so disappointing, just all their nominations. But this year wasn't so bad, so I was hoping that I could talk about them, you know? So, without further ado, let's discuss the nominations for Best Picture this year and see if they're deserving of the nomination. So the first nominee is Ford v Ferrari, and I'm actually very surprised at this nomination. In a happy way, though. I certainly think it deserves it, even if I don't necessarily think that there's a chance that it'll actually win. I mean, I think my biggest gripe with the film was just the amount of American pride that I just can't relate to. I mean, even then, it wasn't, as Amerocentric as I thought it would be. It wasn't, a huge focus. And they just placed a lot of the film on the growth and width of its characters and some really thrilling sequences, and it's just an extremely entertaining and satisfying film due in part to the fantastic direction of James Mangold and its two great leads. I guess I was just a little let down by just the American industry pride, haha, we're better than every other country in the world, but that it just wasn't played up that much, so I think that really let me enjoy the movie and what the material in it was. So I thought it was a great, uplifting, and thrilling film. I'd be very surprised if it actually won Best Picture, but I wouldn't be mad. I think there's just others more deserving of it. You know, even though it is more than a great movie, I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. I really highly recommend the movie, and I'm really happy it was nominated, but I don't know if I'd be happy if it would win. Alright, so the second film that was nominated for Best Picture was The Irishman, which is a very different type of film compared to all of the rest of them, and it's one that I consider to be great and definitely worthy of this nomination, but I just can't call it my favorite of the nominees either. It's very compelling, it boasts strong character arcs and very heavy themes, and it's very, very well directed and acted. It's just very monumental, and I can't say that it's for everyone. It's a whopping 3.5 hours long, and the pacing is a little less than admired. In the end, despite achieving so much, it's just a little difficult to pay attention to all the way through. I mean, even so, I can recommend it to most people, but to try to watch it through its sheer length just might not be for everyone. And it's a great film in the end, and it arguably earns its runtime, but I really honestly do think it really could have cut at least 15 minutes out, just for pacing's sake. And I mean, I'll still give it an 8 out of 10, and I don't think I would be upset or surprised if this won Best Picture. I mean, it has a good chance. And even though I thought, Ford v Ferrari was a better movie, considering how American-centric it is, I really doubt it will win, and I'd almost rather The Irishman win, even if I liked it a little less. But I think it just has a good chance, you know? Alright, so the third movie nominated for Best Picture is Jojo Rabbit, which is a film beloved by many. But I do have to admit, it's honestly my least favorite of the nominees here. I mean, the plot of this film is just very heavy in what its ideas are. It's making fun of the Nazis and all of their intentions and stuff, and that's a great idea for a movie, and it really tries to combine these really heavy themes with these really comedic elements, and it just in the end for me feels like mixing ingredients that were great on their own, just not so much with each other. The comedy is funny, but it undermines a lot of the seriousness of the film. And there were honestly some really good character moments, but it just didn't always feel earned because of the comedy. And Jojo's imaginary friend Adolf Hitler just wasn't that funny at all, and that was a bit of a letdown. And I'm not trying to say the movie was bad because I was expecting something else, but because that's not really the truth. But buried beneath all the lightheartedness is just a powerful story, and buried beneath all the admittedly decent war melodrama is just comedy gold. It doesn't unravel itself in the way that it probably should. It has some thought-provoking ideas and is sure to be admired by many for the way it satirizes the Nazis, because it does that very, very well, but I just didn't think it matched my taste all that much. I'd probably give it, in total, maybe like a 5.5 out of 10, and I really don't think it'll win Best Picture. And if it does, it won't really matter that much to me, because I'll be kind of underwhelmed if it does. Whether or not it deserves to be here is questionable, but I mean, like, a lot of people seem to really like this movie, and their compliments aren't akin to the compliments that a movie like Bohemian Rhapsody got. Like, they're legitimate. I just don't think it really fit my taste, and I can't say that I enjoyed watching it. You know? That makes sense, I think. Alright, let's get to the elephant in the room. The fourth nominee is Joker, the crowd pleaser of this year's nominees. That made bank, like $1 billion, and it's an R-rated movie. And I think it's easily the best comic book film of the year, in face of just a volley of disappointments. Now, I know not everyone agrees that pretty much every other comic book movie this year was disappointing, but, like, that's how I felt. Alright, let's actually talk about Joker, because I think that there's some problems with it, with the movie. Like, I don't think it's perfect, because it's pretty, you know, simple in its message. And that society is wretched. Like, it's very on the nose. But its character and world building are very intriguing, and it does have an engaging plot. But having watched it again, I can't say it was as great as I thought it initially was. Its message is very strong, and I think that's unquestionable, but it just boils down to that society is bad. It's not very challenging. And from a film of what is basically this caliber, where every other film on this list is at least in some part a bit challenging to comprehend, and it makes you think and contemplate on the messages, this movie really doesn't, because it doesn't have to. It's just that society is bad. And I know I wouldn't normally nitpick, but in the face of some of the best movies of the year, it just kind of has a lot to be desired into the craftsmanship of the story. I mean, okay, Joaquin Phoenix is great, and the character of the Joker helps drive this film even when the scenes go on for too long. I really love the music, which bolstered the movie further. I think, in general, I'm kind of stuck on giving it like either a 7 or a 7.5, because I still think it's a good to like really good movie. Like, I really enjoyed elements like the cinematography, and it was still a very enticing movie to watch. But at the same time, I just can't ignore the fact that, like, you have The Irishman, which is this epic gangster film. You have Jojo Rabbit, which I liked less, but satirizes the Nazis in such a way. And Ford v Ferrari, which is just such an intense and engaging movie. And all three of these films, even if I like some of them less than Joker, that being Jojo Rabbit, it just does something for me. It makes me think a little bit. You know, and I feel as if that movie, even though I like less, feels more deserving of the position of being nominated. And so, in total, it feels like this is the crowd-pleasing nomination. You know, it's basically like Bohemian Rhapsody and Black Panther from last year. I mean, Black Panther is not a bad movie at all, but it just felt out of place, and okay, fine, I thought Bohemian Rhapsody was a bad movie, sue me. But in general, because those pictures did not win Best Picture, I have a lot of doubt that Joker would win Best Picture either. And I will admit, I'd be mildly upset if it did, because this film is, I hate to say it, it's ultimately kind of superficial, because, like, fine, I enjoyed watching it more than Jojo Rabbit, but I can't call that movie uncontemplative. Joker isn't bad. On the contrary, I just think it's a little bit more tame and safe in comparison to all the other nominees. I mean, in the face of comic book movies, like, it's definitely one of the better ones. But it just doesn't stand out as much as the other movies. And if it's your favorite movie of the year, if you haven't seen other movies on this list, and it's just your favorite, you know what? I'm really happy for you, because there's a lot to like about this movie. I just don't think it quite deserves to win Best Picture. I hope my argument here makes sense. Alright, so the next movie to talk about is Little Women, which isn't my least favorite on the list, but if I did have to choose the most boring, this might just be it. And I mean, I'm just so conflicted because there's just so much to like about this movie, especially when the plot sets in. But it's offset by some problems, including some scenes that just end up feeling empty and detached. The characters are probably the most interesting part of the movie, and I enjoyed watching their plights when there were plights present. A sizable portion of the film is just people doing stuff without too much conflict, which in some cases can lead to great movies like Call Me By Your Name, but in those cases it's usually offset by more interesting internal struggles that this film can often lack, aside from maybe Timothée Chalamet. When drama sets in these pivotal scenes, I honestly think the movie's pretty mesmerizing. The themes are pretty poignant and the setting is immersive and all. I just think that there'd be a lot that I'd skip if I were to rewatch this, especially considering a lot of it doesn't even really end up building on the characters. I think what it boiled down to is that I just didn't really find myself always connecting with the plot. But honestly, that could just be because I'm not a woman, because this movie is really geared towards femininity in that kind of way. Obviously, it's not like an offensive movie by any stretch, but it might just be more enjoyable if you're a woman. But technically speaking, the movie is legitimately fantastic, and I was actually surprised at how good some of the aspects of this side of the film were. When the scenes were getting too boring, the characters would often move around and interact with each other in the environment in a very engaging and fluid way. The cinematography, the production design, the acting, and even especially the lighting were all pretty excellent, and I'm genuinely surprised and disappointed that Greta Gerwig did not get nominated for Best Director, especially over the controversy of there not being a female director nominated this year. And the fact that Todd Phillips, the director of Joker, got nominated over her is just kind of confusing to me. Like, he didn't do a bad job at all, like on the contrary, he did a good job. But honestly, it was really Joaquin Phoenix that drove the movie to be as good as it was, and it's kind of a meme that Joker has so many nominations, to be honest. I mean, like, the other directors nominated, like Martin Scorsese, Bong Joon-ho, Quentin Tarantino, and Shawn Mendes, I think all really deserved their spots, even though I did think there were some problems with 1917 in terms of the screenplay. The direction itself was really good, and that goes the same with Little Woman. And I think Miss Gerwig really deserved to be up there with them. And although I did enjoy my time with this film, though I constantly did find myself out of touch with the story during certain parts, just when it started to get slow and it was just the characters doing stuff, I guess. I mean, I absolutely don't regret watching it, though. I just admittedly might be bored upon rewatching it. I was even bored in some parts of just watching it in general. And I mean, if you like period pieces, or you need a movie for girls' night out, I think this is your movie. Considering she lost the director nomination, I don't think this will win Best Picture, nor do I really think it deserved to win Best Picture otherwise. I think the thing is that even though I think Greta deserved to be nominated for Best Director, and I wouldn't even be upset if she were to win that because she did do a great job directing. I wouldn't really want the screenplay to be nominated as much, just because I think there's a lot lacking in the story. But that might just be me, honestly. I think this is one of the few movies that I can say this might just be because I'm not in tune with what's being presented. Because I try to go in with an open mind every time, and I did go in with two girls. I watched it with Tia and Ava, and I think they really enjoyed it. And you know what? I'm really happy for them. I ended up walking out of the theater giving it maybe a 6.5 out of 10, just because I did think it was a pretty good movie. I just wasn't totally engaged all the way through. But it's honestly kind of grown on me just because of how well crafted it is. And even though I'm complaining about the story a lot, there is still a lot of the story that I did like. There's a lot of moments where I was really watching it and I was really liking it. There's just maybe half the movie that I was just okay, I'm passively watching this. You know, I'm having an okay time, and then the other half I was enjoying it much more. It just felt like there were some scenes that just really didn't end up amounting to anything aside from just having the characters do more things and maybe padding out running time. But even considering all of those issues, you know what? I did end up thinking the movie was good, and I think I'm going to settle on a 7 out of 10. Okay, let's move on to the next nomination, which is 1917, which is another war movie about a guy who has to deliver a message from one place to another. It's very simple. It has very, very, very little emphasis on story. But despite that, I really had an exhilarating time. I mean, it's extremely entertaining to watch, and it is strong all the way through, and the action is thrilling, the cinematography is fantastic, thank you Roger Deakins. Technically speaking, this movie is masterful, especially considering its ambitious one-shot take for the entire runtime. Its characters aren't as fleshed out as they could have been, though. I mean, Had this film boasted a stronger story and it had placed more depth in its characters, it honestly could have been one of the best of the year. I mean, the thing is that I did find it to be a great film just because the technical elements were so good. It cannot be understated. It's just that it doesn't have much of an emphasis on story, and it kind of reminds me of Mad Max Fury Road in that way, but even though that film didn't have too much of an emphasis on its story, that didn't mean that the story it had wasn't powerful. And this movie has some powerful elements to its story, but it's just not a focus that was thought of thoroughly. And I guess that makes it a little more disappointing than the rest of like my 8 out of 10s, because I am going to give this film an 8 out of 10. Because it just doesn't have an emphasis on story, I just have so many doubts that this would be even considered to actually win the award. And I'd be kind of stranged out, you know, if it won the award, just because it just doesn't really have a story. It's basically the character who ends up carrying the message in the end just has a really strong motivation, and you feel relief once he does, and there's an emotional moment at the end, but that's pretty much all there is to the story. Like, the characters have their motivations, every action makes sense, but I didn't feel like I really learned anything like I did with the other movies, even the ones that I didn't like as much as this one. I still recommend it though, like, anybody should watch this movie. Alright, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the next nomination. Ooh, it's one of Tarantino's most laid-back films that just feels like life. And it's hard to really describe the plot. I know I haven't been doing that for every movie. I mean, like, The Irishman's just a gangster film. I don't think there's much more to describe without spoiling it. But this film is so different. Like, whimsically different. I don't know how to describe this movie's plot. It's just about actors that are just trying to get over the golden era of their life. And it's so whimsical in the most adult way possible, focusing on its wonderfully written characters. And it takes a little bit longer than probably would be expected to immerse the audience, but once you get clutched in, it's inescapable. It's thoughtful, meaningful, innovative, and sports some standout sequences. Especially the movie in a movie scene, which was so riveting. And the end climax is so genuinely incredible. And despite some slow pacing and its detached storyline and all that such, it makes such a truly unique experience. And the technical elements match the quality of the content as well, like, no doubt. We're talking about one of the most talented directors in Hollywood. And the performances are the career best for its stars. And even though it's long, and even though, like, it's so laid back, like, I think this is definitely a must-watch of the year, and I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10. I have my doubts that it would win Best Picture. Like, I kind of think that's going to be limited to maybe 3 or 4 of the movies, but you know what? If this movie won Best Picture, I'd be genuinely very happy. I think Tarantino deserves awards for this movie. It's great. It's fantastic, even. I highly recommend it. Alright, so there's one last nomination, because there were 9 nominations this year instead of 8 from last year. And although I haven't finished my 2019 watch list, I have this gut feeling inside me. Nothing will trump my love for Parasite. This film is everything that I want out of a movie. It's so impactful, it's meaningful, it's intense, it's engaging. The cinematography is some of the best of all year. The acting and music are just great. It's fantastically crafted in every sense of the word. The script is so fucking good, and I can't recommend this movie enough. I know it's foreign, I know you'll have to read subtitles to get this movie, but it's just a must-watch. And I mean, from pushing aside some incredibly minor nitpicks, I would call this film a masterpiece, and I would be absolutely ecstatic if it won Best Picture. I don't want to spoil it too much, but what it's basically about is that it's set in South Korea, and it's kind of about, you know, classist issues, but it takes it in such an unexpected and surprising way, and it's so thought-provoking. And I've still been contemplating it to this day, and I saw this movie weeks ago. It's so good, and it's one of Bong Joon-ho's best films. He made movies like Snowpiercer, which is also another great film that I'd highly recommend, but this might just be his best. And I would be so so happy, and I think this has a good shot of winning Best Picture. I mean, I said the same thing about Roma last year, which deserved the Best Picture out of the nominees that it was, handed out to. Because I know they don't really like giving foreign movies, a Best Picture award, but by God, the fact that this is even nominated is great, and I really, really hope it wins. So even with some great nominees, I might disagree with some of them, but I'm generally happy with all these nominees. Just looking at, everything else, I do think there was some snubs. I think The Lighthouse definitely deserved more nominations. It only got a cinematography mention. And even if you wouldn't want to nominate it for Best Picture, which it deserved over plenty of these movies, I'd probably give that movie close to a 10 out of 10, like I would for Parasite and Marriage Story. Willem Dafoe does a career best performance, and I'm kind of upset that he wasn't nominated for anything. The Farewell is another great movie. That film is about a grandma not knowing she's dying, but because of cultural norms, they don't tell her, and honestly, I'm kind of surprised that the Academy didn't eat that kind of subject matter up. Knives Out's a great movie. I'm really happy it is nominated for Best Original Screenplay. I think it may have deserved more. And of course, Hollywood hates horror, so Midsommar wasn't nominated for anything. It's a little sad. The Two Popes is a great movie. Wasn't nominated for anything, but I'm not necessarily upset about it. Anthony Hopkins was nominated, wasn't he? He deserves it. One thing I was surprised about is the fact that Ad Astra did not get nominated for visual effects, despite having some of the best all year. It was only nominated for, I think, sound mixing, but it still deserved a nomination for sound editing. Dolomite Is My Name wasn't nominated for any Oscars. Jennifer Lopez probably should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actress for her role in Hustlers. Dark Waters wasn't nominated for anything, and although I love John Wick 3, I understand why it wasn't nominated for anything. It's not the kind of movie that the Academy would eat up. I haven't watched it yet, but Uncut Gems looks fantastic. It was made by the same directors of Good Time, and apparently Adam Sandler puts in a career best performance. I know I've been saying that a lot. So all in all, I mean, I'm not disappointed with all of these nominations. I mean, I just don't necessarily think some of them deserve to be there, and that some more deserve. Maybe they just need to just up the ante, and they should have just set it at 10 from the beginning for Best Picture. But you know what? Whoever wins, I'm probably going to be happy, because I can't imagine the ones I dislike would win. But my God. Please watch Parasite. Please watch Marriage Story. Support these creators. They're really, really great movies. And if you disagree with me on anything, you know what? That's totally fine. Everybody has their preferences. I know I might be the only person on earth that's just not falling in love with Jojo Rabbit. It just didn't... it spoke to me. It did, but I just had such trouble watching it because I just thought the transitions from comedy to tragedy were just too jarring for my taste, and that other movies have pulled it off better. But Taika Waititi is still a very talented director, and I really hope he continues with it. But I think that's all I have to say on everything. So Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, please watch it. The Lighthouse, not for everybody, but I loved it anyways. It's fucking weird. Okay, I'm just droning on, aren't I? Alright, I hope you enjoyed my video, and hopefully the Oscars won't be trite this year. Bye bye!